How's it going, YouTube? Welcome to the official, quote-unquote, start of the 2022 summer season, otherwise and better and more appropriately known as Memorial Day, which, for those of you under a rock somehow, somewhere, some why, some when, is the national American holiday set aside the final Monday in the month of May to remember and commemorate the ultimate sacrifices made by the members of our armed forces who left home in service of this great nation and did not come back. So we take today to remember them. Typically, we barbecue, we put flags out at cemeteries, we get together and we celebrate, but we also take time in our own ways, ideally at least, to remember those who fell, who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of freedom and democracy and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, both here in the United States, such as in action in the American Revolution back in 1776 through 1781, the War of 1812, which ended in 1815, as well as the Mexican-American War, 1845, the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, Spanish-American War, 1898, and then, of course, World War I from 1917 for the U.S. and through 1918, and then, of course, World War II from 1941 to 1945, Korea, 1950 to 53, I believe. Then Vietnam, 1965 through 1973, 74. I don't have my dates on that one correct, I'm sure. And then getting closer to current times, we have the first Gulf War conflicts in 1989 and 1990, 1991. Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I believe that's the actual correct order. Shield, then Storm, I believe. And then following September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks, Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, and then Operation Iraqi Freedom starting in 2003. And then officially Operation Enduring Freedom, I believe, concluded with our final pullout in 2021, just a little around just not quite a year ago. And then I'm not actually sure Operation Iraqi Freedom has an official end date because I didn't look it up before I started making this video. So I probably should have. That's my mistake. I do apologize. But what I want to talk about is one of the ways that I like to remember and commemorate the memory of our fallen soldiers, and that is with a piece of living history. This is my M1 Garand Rifle. Officially, it is the US Rifle caliber 30 M1. This one is made by Springfield Armory. It has a 430,000 serial number. It's number 434564. The receiver itself was manufactured in January 1942, so Pearl Harbor had only recently been struck the month before when this rifle originally came off the assembly line. I'm fairly certain this rifle served in the European theater. I do not know if it served in the Pacific. I literally cannot confirm that because records, they don't have them as far as which rifles went where, but this rifle, I believe, was carried into combat by the United States Army in Europe, possibly also in North Africa. Again, I don't have any idea. And I believe once the war was over, 1945, this rifle came back to the United States from Europe, and there is a little mark here that I can barely read that suggests it went through a re-arsenaling process in Arlington, Virginia, where I believe the whole rifle was torn apart and it was rebuilt, and then I believe it was sent to a U.S. military, training base, Army base, and was used as a training rifle until 1955, 1959, and at that point it was surplused out, possibly even given to someone who served at that base as a staff member or a soldier there. I don't know. Again, I can't confirm this because when I got my hands on this rifle, it had not probably been fired in 50, 60, maybe even 70 years. It had probably been in someone's closet for a long time because there was a patch of corrosion about midway down the barrel because some material had been sitting there that had gotten in the barrel years ago. When I got it, there was no lubrication on the rifle. It was completely dry, so I had to take it all the way apart, lubricate all the important pieces, and also was able, when I had it apart, I was able to determine, thanks to the markings on individual components, where those components, or I'm sorry, when those components came from. For example, the bolt assembly under this plate here, I believe dates to 1940, I think December of 1940. No, I'm sorry, September 1940, I believe, because the trigger assembly, I believe, dates to December 1942, while again, the receiver dates it to January 1942. The barrel, I believe, is a 1945 barrel. I, again, can't really confirm that. I can just guesstimate. I don't think there's a year marking on the barrel itself, but it definitely is not the original barrel. I don't believe this is the original stock, but it still does have very faintly visible here, if you can kind of see it there. I probably cannot because I'm just using my phone again as usual. Is the Circle P cartouche that indicated this rifle was approved for battle use, for use in combat, I believe. That's what it means. I, again, can't confirm because I'm not an expert in the history of this rifle or how the U.S. military and the Ordnance Corps operated. You can see significant wear here on the gas port screw, and just an amazing rifle to own. The op rod doesn't have a specific date on it or a lot number that would give me an idea of whether it's original or if it was just in a batch of parts. I literally have no idea. What I did do with this rifle is not too long ago I went ahead and replaced all the springs in it. So it's got a brand new trigger spring, it has a brand new op rod spring, it has the springs on the firing pin and the ejector pin were replaced. I do need to rebuild the sights on it, but that's going to be the next project before I really go on from there. I may have the barrel replaced, I'm not sure yet, because the barrel still seems like it's in pretty good shape, good rifling, good quality, good condition. Because again, this rifle went into a training facility, I believe, and then was essentially surplused out and was in someone's closet for decades before I was lucky enough to find it in a local gun shop. The store staff told me that the rifle had come in on a Friday and they had bought it from whoever sold it to them. Probably someone didn't know what they had or just did not want the firearm because they felt unsafe around it. Again, I don't know what their mindset was, but they had it, they wanted money for it. The gun store, of course, is going to buy it because it's an M1 Garand. These things are legendary. And they're hugely valuable to collectors and historians and people who appreciate the history of this era of military, ordnance, weapons, and just battles in general. Hugely valuable collector's items, but also very much more importantly, this is a piece of living history. I was talking earlier about how I remember and honor and commemorate the sacrifice of those soldiers who have served. This is how I do it. By keeping this rifle in functioning condition, I'm doing a little piece to remember those who fought and died, not just for us here in the United States, but also for people in Europe, in the Pacific, and later on in Korea, to preserve South Korea against the communist invasion from North Korea supported by China. Pardon me, folks. But keeping this piece of history alive and in functioning condition is how I honor the memory of those who went to war, did not come home, whether it was World War II, whether it was Iraqi freedom, enduring freedom, Vietnam, I don't care. I honor the memory of everyone who has fallen in service of this nation, who gave that last full measure by keeping this rifle in functioning condition. And it does function. Oh, good Lord. It is a joy to fire this rifle. For example, this is a 30-06 bullet, because this rifle is chambered in 30-06. It's not a 7.62 NATO conversion. This is manufactured, I believe, by a European company of all people, called Privy Partisan, I believe. But this is replica M2 ball, which means that it has the powder mixture and the pressure rating that will make it safe to operate in this literally 80-year-old battle rifle that I still keep in functioning condition, and that still functions beautifully. I had it out to the range today. I was complete garbage shooting it, and I feel I dishonored this rifle and those who carried it into battle by being so poor with it today shooting. I fired 11 rounds or so through. I let my dad shoot it as well. He enjoyed it. And I missed badly. It was embarrassing. When I first had this rifle out to test fire it after I got it and lubricated it and all that, I did significantly better. Today I was just horrible, and I feel really bad about it because on Memorial Day I was very poorly performing with this rifle. Again, I feel sad about it, feel bad about it, but you know, it's just now a challenge to get better with this rifle, taking it to ranges when I can, just getting better, you know, sights, you know, where to hold, all of that. There's a range not too far away from me in Wisconsin that is an outdoor range out to 300 yards is the maximum range they offer for the public, the general public, to come and shoot at. My goal with this rifle is to be able to competently and accurately hit a target at 300 yards with this rifle using no optic, just the iron sights. Whether or not I achieve that goal remains to be seen, but that is my goal with this rifle. And again, I'm just gonna, as long as I own this rifle, and trust me, I am so proud to own this piece of history. And through my life, I will be making sure that this rifle is well taken care of, that it is stored properly, it is lubricated properly, cleaned, and then taken out to the range so that freedom can ring, and the memory of those soldiers who carried this into battle lives on, literally, through living history. I'm also a member of the Garand Collectors Association. You can find out more about them at thegca.org. Great outfit. They publish a quarterly magazine with stories about the Garand through history, people who have family members who bequeathed them these firearms, people who have become collectors, people who have just fallen in love with it by becoming a shooting enthusiast or a hobbyist, people like me who kind of fell in love with it by accident. I actually first came to love this rifle's successor, the M14, and I have one of those as well. The civilian version is the M1A by Springfield Armory. I have one of those, but owning this rifle, honestly, is the most special. It's the most special firearm that I have, and again, because of the historical value, because of what it represents, and because of what I get to do with it by keeping it functioning, keeping it alive, so to speak. And to go with the rifle, I have an actual bayonet. This is the M1 Garands Bayonet. This was manufactured in 1943, I believe, by American Fork and Hoe. You can see here on the blade, there is the AFH marker for American Fork and Hoe, and you have the U.S. Ordnance Corps bomb symbol right there. This was not a Lend-Lease article. This is an actual 1943, again, I believe 1943 bayonet, and whoops, come on, let's do this right. Goes onto the rifle like that, and there it goes. Rifle with the bayonet, fearsome weapon. General George S. Patton called this the finest battle implement ever developed. He wasn't wrong, because this rifle was the first standard issue semi-automatic rifle issued as a general infantry weapon in 1936 when the U.S. Ordnance Corps adopted it officially as the standard infantry weapon, following a lengthy, I believe, almost 20-year development period following, about a 16-year development period following World War I. John C. Garand, the Canadian-American, developed and designed this rifle. The first iteration of it actually was a magazine-fed rifle, and it could carry more than 10 rounds. This rifle is only an 8-round capacity with an internal magazine, but the U.S. Army Ordnance Corps, or the Ordnance Corps, however you pronounce it, or refer to it, they wanted internal magazine only because they wanted a modernized semi-automatic, well, what they called auto-loading, modernized M1903 rifle. The M1903 was America's general issue rifle during World War I, and chambered again 30-06. They wanted to use same bullet, same cartridge, same powder, same power, but they were using M1 ball, they called it at the time. M2 ball, which this replicates, was developed, I believe, in 1938 because they wanted a little bit of a shorter range on it, because M1 ball coming out of these rifles, and I believe the 1903s as well, was exceeding the safety tolerances at the development and testing facility, I believe at Camp Perry, Ohio. They were out shooting the maximum range of the areas they were testing the bullets and rifles at, so they toned it down with the M2 ball cartridge that is now what basically is used in these rifles. But I am forgetting, sort of, one very particularly important thing. What is the first rule of handling a firearm? That is to make sure the firearm is indeed safe to handle by making sure the weapon is clear. So let's go ahead and do that. Now it's clear, now it's safe. There is the legendary ping from the M1 Garand. That sound brings joy to anyone who hears it on a shooting range and understands what it means. There's a lot of legend and hearsay about the Germans hearing that and knowing the Americans were reloading so they would attack more fiercely or something to that effect, but you know, I don't know the ins and outs of that. All I know is that it's just so much fun to shoot. But the Army Ordnance Corps, they wanted a rifle that had a limited internal magazine capacity because their doctrine, their idea was to make sure that our soldiers made every shot count out of these rifles. So they wanted to limit the ability for our soldiers overseas in World War II to just expend ammunition at a fast rate. The doctrine of that changed after World War II in Korea, and we adopted firearms that could be select fire, go from semi-automatic firing mode, to full automatic. The M14 tried to do that, failed miserably, unfortunately, and that gave way to the M16, I believe, in 1968 during Vietnam. So that is some history of this rifle. Some of you folks already knew that, some of you did not. I hope you enjoyed that bit of a lesson. But again, this is a living monument to those who fought but did not come home. And again, I am honored to own this rifle. I am honored to take care of it. I am honored to make sure it remains a piece of living history and not just on a shelf or in a closet somewhere, but ready should the need arise to go back into action in defense of freedom and liberty, should the highly unlikely but still possible need ever arise. So it's a fantastic rifle. I enjoy shooting it. Again, it's just an absolute joy to shoot it. The bayonet, I never use the bayonet on it at the range. It's just, I have this because I feel it's good to have it as part of the history of the firearm, and another piece of history from that period as well. Again, living history that I'm preserving to honor the memory of those who fell and also those who served, but we still have with us, much in the way that the American Battlefield Monument Commission takes care of American war dead cemeteries overseas, making sure that the graves of our honored dead are constantly and daily cared for and remain in immaculate condition out of respect for those who fought and died, especially, well, not just especially, but just everywhere that there was an American military cemetery. Our war dead are taken care of by very dedicated individuals, and we're all familiar with Arlington National Cemetery out by Washington, D.C. I've seen it from the air. It's an absolutely amazing and humbling sight. We've all seen it in Saving Private Ryan, if you've seen that movie. It's been featured in many other movies as well. Yeah, there's the unfortunate reality is that there seems to be fewer and fewer of these artifacts just in the wild, so to speak. But the groups who are dedicated to preserving whatever they can of our military history, out of respect for those periods, out of respect for those who served, and out of respect for those who did not come home, is absolutely tremendous. For example, in July, the Commemorative Air Force is bringing their B-29 Fifi to the Chicago area, and I have a ticket for a ride on that bomber. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to go on that bomber. But those guys and other outfits like them are preserving World War II aircraft and keeping them in a flying condition and enabling people to experience, again, living history that is still functional, obviously optimized for civilian operation with some modern equipment to ensure navigational safety and geolocation safety and things of that nature, but still otherwise preserved as historical artifacts that are essentially alive and still functional pieces of history that tour the United States every year whenever possible, and just bring history alive to those who had family, who served, as well as keeping alive the spirit of those who did serve by, these literal flying museums that operate, and they're amazing to see and watch. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to ride on one at long last. And then, of course, we got the U.S. Navy museums, all the battleships we still have. We still have 8 battleships as museums that are also memorials to U.S. Navy and Marines, U.S. Navy sailors, and Marines who served and did not come home. I've been only to one of them, unfortunately, USS Alabama. I was down there in 2010. That was an amazing sight to see. Been to a couple of U.S. World War II submarines, Pampanito in San Francisco, and then I forget which submarine is at the Alabama Museum and Memorial, but they have one there as well. I want to go visit all 4 of the Iowas. I know we've got Missouri overwatching the USS Arizona Memorial in Pearl Harbor. We've got 2 Iowas on the East Coast, USS New Jersey, which I've seen from afar as I drove past it in my truck, crossing into New Jersey a few months back. And then we've got USS Wisconsin in, I believe it's Newport News, USS Iowa recently, about almost 10 years ago now, actually. Wow, it's been a while. Opened up as a museum and memorial in Los Angeles, California. And then we've got USS Massachusetts in Boston, I believe, or somewhere in that vicinity. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly where. And then North Carolina is down, and of course in North Carolina. And then the immortal Texas is down there. And did I mention New Jersey? I think I mentioned New Jersey. I don't want to forget New Jersey because they got a good YouTube channel as well. Not as better than mine, obviously, but still, they're quite the outfit there, and they do a lot of good work. We still have a World War I era ship on display, USS Olympia, which needs some help, but still afloat, I believe. And then, of course, there's Old Ironsides herself, USS Constitution in Boston, and that ship, that's a monument in and of itself, a living legend, the hero, in a manner of speaking, of the War of 1812. And a symbol of American freedom and our enduring spirit. The only warship still afloat from that period, and one of the oldest still floating warships, if not the oldest still floating warship in the world, as far as I'm aware. And it still does fire its guns in salute, and it does sail under its own power for brief periods under actual sail in Boston Harbor. So we have a lot of tremendous history that we have taken great pains to preserve, thanks to the efforts of just ordinary, everyday people who have raised money to create these museums and establish the commissions and the organizations to preserve these important cultural touchstones, not just for us Americans here in the States, but also for people around the world to look back and reflect on what needed to be done at certain periods to ensure that other nations, other people, other cultures could remain their own people, their own nation, their own culture. Unbelievable sacrifices were made by a lot of men and women of all cultures and creeds in a lot of very crucial periods, World War II being among the most crucial, because in a lot of ways that was the last war we've ever fought in some respects. First of all, it was the last declared war we ever fought, and we haven't declared war on anyone since. We just go into action using the term police action or something to that effect. But World War II was the last war we fought as an official war, documented and recorded as such by Senate action approving a resolution to declare war, I believe is how the actual process works. It could be wrong, of course. Which is why we look back on World War II in some ways so fondly, not just because of the resounding American victory that made that war's resolution possible, because of our industrial power and the ability that we had to just send war material out from all across the nation that was likewise protected from enemy attack. The Germans and the Japanese, they could not reach the industrial heartland of America. They couldn't do anything. They could sink the ships that were bringing the material across the ocean to the fronts in Europe, starting first in England, then of course Africa, and then later on in France. But eventually, our destroyers kept the U-boats at bay, and the rest of the Navy's ships helped the destroyers keep the U-boats at bay, and then we just could not be stopped. We had too much industrial power and prowess, and this rifle and the 5 million others like it that were produced during and after World War II are a testament to that, because there were 4 companies that made these rifles. Springfield Armory got the initial contract, and then Remington, Winchester, and Harrington and Richardson also were given contracts to produce these rifles to make sure we had a lot of them. And even after World War II, these rifles were used in Lend-Lease options to nations in Europe, and they served in a lot of places until other rifles could come behind this rifle and replace it, in a manner of speaking. And then these rifles came back to the U.S., where they went through the civilian marksmanship program in some respects, in some cases anyway, that were then rebuilt, refurbished best they could be, and then they were sold to the general public. And a lot of these rifles went through the CMP process. I don't believe this one did because of how the stock is. I mean, I believe this is an original combat issued stock that then was just used at a training facility, or maybe, possibly, after it got back from the war in 1945, just went into someone's closet after it got re-arsenaled, and that was it. But, I mean, the rack number suggests here, I mean, it's, got the number 109 right there. It suggests that it was a rack weapon used in a training facility, but again, I can't confirm that. I don't know. All I know is that, again, I am thrilled to own this weapon. It is a living tribute to those who fought and those who did not come home. And this is how I honor them, by keeping this rifle in the spirit of those who served in those conflicts now long past alive. This is how I honor them. And for all those families who lost someone in combat, thank you for what they did is not enough. It never will be enough. There is no words we have that can give any form of honor or recognition to the ultimate sacrifice made by soldiers in the service of their nation in an honorable cause. We don't have the words for it. Thank you is all we've got. The honor that we give to those when they come back and wherever they end up being buried, just making sure their final resting place is so well cared for. It's a very small return on the investment that individual made on behalf of a greater good. And again, it's all we've got. It's the best we can do, but we do it, and we do it every day, however we can. Obviously, I don't take this rifle on the truck with me. This rifle stays at home in my gun safe, safe and sound and secure while I'm on the road delivering freight and moving America's merchandise from A to B. But whenever I get my hands on it, I feel so glad that I have it, and I feel so thrilled and honored, like I've said before. And it is my joy and my honor and my duty in some respects to keep this rifle alive, so the spirit of those who fought likewise stays alive. There's a lot of bad politics about guns right now because of tragedies that we've unfortunately had to experience either directly or by proxy in Uvalde, Texas, and in California, Sandy Hook in Connecticut, Las Vegas, so many places where we've had to experience people just forgetting to be human, that it becomes easy for us to consider these things to be evil. The people who use them improperly, they are the ones who are evil. They are the ones who are the demented souls that needed some form of help before they picked up a firearm, decided to take someone else's life for no other reason than because they could. But in the service of nations, in the service of people, in honorable causes that were just and noble, rifles like these went up against evil, went up against tyranny, and they fought. The men who carried them were wounded and died, but they beat the enemy back. They defeated Nazi Germany. In some respects, rifles like these held the communists at bay in the Pacific. Right? This rifle may have done work against the Nazis for all I know. It may have even gone to the Pacific. I don't know. But this rifle served. This rifle was carried by GIs in a battlefield, and the man or men who carried it went into battle that first time scared and terrified, and they came out of it warriors. But they went in, and they went in bravely, and they went in knowing they could end up making the ultimate sacrifice and not coming home. A lot of them did come home, thank God for that, but a lot of them didn't. And I hope that anyone who touched this rifle, who carried it into combat, came home alive in one piece. I really do hope that, but I can't confirm it. I hope they did. But if by some chance there was a soldier who carried this rifle who did not come home, this is how I honor that soldier or soldiers, by keeping their firearm and their spirit by proxy alive. So with that being said, my friends, thank you so much for watching. And again, to those families who lost someone, whether recently or in the distant past, thank you is not enough, but it's all we've got. But keeping these things alive, keeping these rifles and these artifacts, the bombers, the airplanes, the fighters, the ships, keeping these things here, alive, active, living pieces of history, it is a sacred, solemn duty. Simple in some cases, like maintaining this rifle is very simple because there's a huge following for this rifle. I can get parts, I can get new barrels, I can keep this rifle alive as long as I'm alive, and I will do so. It is my honor to do so. It is my joy to do so, and I do so willingly and with a very grateful heart, because the people who served, my friends who served in the military, were braver than I was when I had the opportunity to join out of high school. They joined, they served, they fought, some of them fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. I did not. I didn't have the courage. They did. So if any of my friends who served saw this, thank you so much for your service. Some of you lost friends. I'm so sorry you lost your friends in combat. Some of you had friends who lost friends. I'm so sorry for them. But again, Memorial Day starts the summer season officially, so to speak. But it's also a time where we need to pause and give thanks to those who did serve but didn't come home, because they're why we have what we have. They went out, they fought, they did what had to be done, and what they achieved was nothing short of monumental victory that changed the course of the world for the better forever. And that is why these artifacts, honor them no matter what. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful summer. If you don't watch my videos ever again, have a safe rest of your week. I know this is the end of the day, Monday when I'm making this video, but I was working on my truck today, so that video is coming later. But yes, thank you for watching, and I hope the start to your summer is wonderful and you have good weather and good times, surrounded by friends and family. Times are tough, sort of, but they were tougher a long time ago. But we endure, and we live, we survive, and we are free because of those who did what had to be done with rifles like these. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. I will see you down the road.